morning from the entrance porch, folks. Today in this film I'm going to be making my first cider from apples of the 2024 cider season. It's early July, we've had some wind and I am losing my baby apples off the tree, and rather than throw them away, I'm going to brew with them. So in this film today I'm going to make a rhubarb cider using rhubarb from my garden and windfall apples from my tree. So let's see if there's any more apples that have fallen, and let's pick some rhubarb. So that's the story so far. And here's the beast that is the rhubarb plant. Not a bad crop. And then with each stalk, it's simply a case of topping, just like that. It's a very sharp knife, and tailing. So topping and tailing. I'll come back to you. So that is quite literally the fruits of my labour. Although I believe, technically speaking, rhubarb is a vegetable. I think it is actually. Anyway, what I want to do now is weigh them. So I've got 2,247 grams or 2.24 kilos of windfall baby apples. So my next job is to give these a wash in the sink because they have been on the floor. I'm going to leave them to soak. I need to weigh the rhubarb. And it's a lot easier to weigh rhubarb if it's chopped up into smaller pieces. So I'm just going to chop it all down before going any further. So just as with the apples, I'm now going to get my rhubarb and I'm going to weigh it. It's got to zero the scales. And I've got 2 kilos of rhubarb as well, 2,031. Now I'm not going to use all of this rhubarb because the wife wants to make a rhubarb crumble, and I would definitely get in trouble for using it all. So I'm going to use half of it. So I'm going to remove a kilo. There is 999 grams left in there. That's a kilo. Okay, that's what I'm going to give the wife for the rhubarb crumble. That's what I'm using. So I'm going to tip this into the sink also. That were a bit soily in places, so I just want that to rinse a little bit as well. Just a bit more water in. Right, I'm going to leave these to soak for about half an hour, then I'll come back to you. I'm going to add 500 ml of tap water, which will make about a centimetre or so of water in the bottom of the pan. Then the pan goes on the ring, lid goes on snugly, and I'm going to put the gas on very low. It's on the lowest setting it can be on, and I'm just going to now leave this for a couple of hours, and I want the steam to build up inside there, and that will begin to break down the fibres of the fruit. So I'll give you an update in a little while. Catch you then. Bugger. A watch pot never boils. That one did. Okay, it's a few hours later. I've let this cool down, but what I'm going to do is leave it overnight so it's completely cold, and then I'm going to pick this recipe up in the morrow, so I'll catch you then. Hey folks, it's the next day. It's preparation day 2, and it's time to proceed with the recipe. I'm going to deal with my apple and rhubarb first. So here it is, quite a nice solid mess in the pan. I want to get it out of there and into this wok, strained through this sieve. And this is how I do it. I take some of this, it goes in there, take some more of this, it goes in there, and then I simply stir it round like this. And what will happen is the good stuff, the fleshy bits, will go through the sieve into the pan, and the bits that I don't want, the hard bits, the cores, the pips, the stalks and the apple skin, will stay in the sieve. Now this takes quite a while, it's a labour intensive job, and I can confirm for you that it very much makes my arm ache. It's got to be done. So when I've got some results, I'll come back to you and show you what I've got. See you in a bit. So just as an update, this is where I've got to so far. It looks like baby food. There's still a heck of a lot left, but I've broke my big sieve, unfortunately, and I've tried using a smaller one and it's painful. So I'm going to adjust to a colander. Now I might end up with some bits and bobs going through that I don't want, so I'm going to have to review that afterwards, but that's what the plan right now is. In all honesty, I don't know if it will do any harm if a bit of stalk gets through. The skin shouldn't really make much difference. I don't know. I've always done it through a sieve. I've always wanted it to be as fine as I can get it. But does it actually matter? So it's obviously going to come through this a lot quicker because the holes are bigger. Anyway, I'll come back to you in a bit. Right, that was a bit of a mission, but now I'm done. But now I'm having a change of heart about what kind of cider to make. The reason being that I haven't done this for a while, and I'd kind of forgotten how much puree the fruit would make. Let's have a look. It's made a whole wok full of puree, and this was going to be my fermentation vessel. And if I put that in there, I'm going to end up with sediment to that level, which is absolutely no good whatsoever. So I'm going to put this back in the big pan, put the lid on it, and I'm going to alter my recipe. Now I'm going to have a think about this and I'm going to come back to you tomorrow, but I'm probably going to end up going to the supermarket to buy some extra ingredients to go in there, essentially. I'm not sure what yet, but I'll come back to you tomorrow. So tomorrow will be preparation day 3, brew day 1. Okay, it's taken a bit longer than I'd anticipated, but these things happen. Okay, catch you tomorrow. Hey folks, it's the next day and it's all changed. In fact, it's back to the original plan because something happened. So yesterday when I was pureeing the apple and rhubarb, at the same time I was stewing some rhubarb and gooseberries for my wife to do some baking, okay? Now they look very different, stewed rhubarb and gooseberries and pureed apple and rhubarb, but unfortunately not to my wife. And she ended up using half of my apple and rhubarb puree in baking yesterday. So now I've got literally half of what I had, and therefore I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue in terms of sediment and what's in the bottom of my Muntons wine fermenter just here, which is what I'm going to be brewing in. So essentially the original plan is back on. I've just got less content going into the fermenter, which I think is probably the right way. I should normally be looking at about 1 kilo of puree per gallon or per 5 litres. That's my normal ratio, and you know, I think I'm round about that now. Anyway, just in case this is lacking in flavour because there isn't enough fruit matter in there, I'm also going to add some dehydrated hops which I grew in my garden last year. So this is now going to be a rhubarb and hop cider. So as I'm adding hops, the first thing I need to do is make some hoppy tea. So therefore I've got some spring water here and I'm going to put it in this saucepan. I'm going to throw in 4 tea bags to give it a bit more of a tannin flavour. Now I don't really need to because the skin of the apples and the skin of the rhubarb will contain tannins, but I don't think it will hurt. So these are my dehydrated hops and I might have to encourage them out a little bit. I'm not going to measure how many I'm putting in, I'll just do it until it looks right. That will do. And remember that these are dehydrated, so there is nothing like there would be with concentrated hop pellets in terms of that amount. So then it's lid on, and I'm just going to tidy these up before I put the gas on. Right, that's the ring tidied, so I'm going to turn the gas on and I'm going to put the heat on. Now I don't want it on a huge flame, so I'm just going to turn that down to that. That's nice. And I'm just going to let this come to a simmer. It might take 45 minutes and that's absolutely fine. So I'll come back to you then. Okay, that's been bubbling away now. I'm going to turn that off and I'm just going to leave that for a little bit to begin to cool down. Okay, it's now time to look at the rest of the key ingredients for this brew. So there's the hoppy tea that you've just seen me make. There's the apple and rhubarb puree. I've got spring water. I've added so far about 2 litres and I'm probably going to be adding about another 6 or 7 litres. I've got 1 kilo of brewing sugar. I've got this Van Class dried active yeast, which has actually been very good in wines and in ciders. I'm going to give it some yeast nutrient from Young's, although I probably don't need to because there's a ton of nutrition there, but I'm going to add it anyway. And to hopefully make this a clear brew, I'm going to add some pectolase. And my fermentation vessel of choice is going to be the Muntons wine fermenter. This should be straightforward. Let's crack on. So here's my fermenter, and first things first, I'm going to get some cold water in there to protect it. Now I've done that because I want to strain my hoppy tea in, and the hoppy tea is still quite hot. I need to use that pan again. So the fermenter's made of plastic, but now it's got 3 litres of cold water in there. It will be protected enough because this is still hot. Now I'm just touching the fermenter and it doesn't feel too warm at all, that's totally fine. So back in that same saucepan, I'm now going to add my 1 kilo of brewing sugar. And I'm going to add on top of that some spring water. And what I want to do is dissolve this sugar. Now it does dissolve pretty easy, but it will need a little bit of heat. So this is what I've got, and those bits floating are just bits of hops that are left, they're fine. So I'm just going to give this a little stir. Just make sure it's not stuck to the bottom, and it isn't, so that's good. So then I put the gas on, and I'm going to let that come to a warm. It won't need to simmer, but I want the brewing sugar to dissolve. Right, now using a dishwasher funnel, I'm going to get my apple puree into the Muntons wine fermenter. My apple and rhubarb puree, I should add. So just spoon it in, and it'll all blob through. And there's going to be so much flavour in this. And I think there will be enough actually. I don't think it will be lacking in any way, shape or form. Hopefully I won't get too much sediment, but we'll not know until the time. What I'm going to do is just pour a bit of water into this pan and swill it around. Don't want to waste any puree. Just want to get it off the pan and off the spoon. Big, hopefully not too dramatic pour. So that's the story so far. I'm just going to give it a little stir around inside. Get it all mixing together nicely. So I've got my hoppy tea, my apple and rhubarb puree, and lots of spring water in there so far. Right, brewing sugar update, and that has dissolved. There's just a little bit of surface stuff going on there, but I'm happy enough that's dissolved enough, so I'm going to turn that off. And I've turned it off before this has actually got hot. So that's a good thing. And then I'm going to pour this into the Muntons wine fermenter too. Now this might go everywhere because this pan's a bit drippy. I'll do it slowly. No drama. And all that sugar now increases the original gravity, which will mean that there's going to be a higher alcohol by volume at the end of it. And then with the remainder of my cold spring water, I'm just going to top this up now. Oh, splot. Not too far, because this will build a krausen and I don't want it to come flooding out of the top. If it does, it does. It's no big deal. But I'd rather it didn't. Right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'll show you what I've got. So this is how far the fermenter is. Now the foam on top is just because of all the agitation and the different liquids. This is not a krausen. So that is the level of the liquid. And I would expect the krausen to probably creep up to about that height, sort of just there. hopefully not come flooding through. But like I say, if it does, it does. It's no big deal. Now I'm going to remove 100 ml of liquid from this, and this is to go in the hydrometer tube, and this is so I can take the original gravity. I'll do that in the hydrometer tube separate to this afterwards. So I'm now going to add my dry ingredients into the brew. I'm going to begin with my yeast nutrient from Young's, and I'm going to put 2 rounded soup spoons of yeast nutrient into there. Now my pectolase, also from Young's. This is definitely going to have a haziness to it, so I'm going to put a good rounded soup spoon of pectolase in there. Hopefully that will do the job. A little bit more for good luck. And then finally, I'm going to add my yeast. So I'm going to put 1, 2, and 3 teaspoonfuls of yeast into there, and that'll be fine. So I'm going to give this a good stir. I want the yeast to combine. The liquid is not hot, but it's warmer than room temperature, and that's a good thing because that means the yeast will activate quicker. It will appreciate the warmth. Right, so I'm now going to put the Muntons wine fermenter together. First things first, the trub trap. So if anything does rise up here, hopefully it will keep the chunks out of the airlock. And then the airlock screws on top. I've just got to make sure it's not cross-threaded, and that's gone like a charm. And then put some water in the airlock until it floods out. Yep, so that's enough. And the top goes on, snaps into place. Oh, there we go, not used this for a while. And then finally, the very top screws in to keep it completely airtight so that the airlock is effective. Right, I'm just going to give this a little rinse because it is a bit mucky. I don't like sticky things. So here's what it's looking like. And any activity in the airlock is not fermentation yet, it's just pressure build up because the liquid is warm, that's all. So this is the liquid that I extracted from the brew to take the original gravity, or from the must, and it's finished on an original gravity of 1.030, which is a bit disappointing, to be quite honest. It's a bit low. I need to do some maths and work out whether I'm going to modify this by adding a bit more sugar. Okay, so if this goes the whole way to 0.990 for the final gravity, then I'll end up with a cider of 5.25%. I'm going to live with that. It's not the end of the world. Less than 5 to me would be not worth making. It's just over 5. Let's go for a normal strength cider for a change. So that's what I'm aiming for, 5.25%. So there it is, all labelled up, and now I'm just waiting for fermentation to begin in earnest. I'll come back to you when that happens. Now this is about 6 hours later, and it's fermenting like an express train. Except for they don't ferment, but they do go very quickly. This is going to be a fast fermenter. I think it'll be done fermenting in 5 days. Well, it's just a later on the same day update, but I just want to show you the flocculation that is going on in there. This thing is going absolutely crazy. The yeast is absolutely loving it. The Krausen has risen, but it's not huge, and that's because this is quite a broad fermenting vessel. But look at the level of activity. This is what you want. This is going to be super fast. Well, it's brew day 3, and I said it was going to be a fast one. And you know what? It's been a fast one because fermentation has dropped to about once every 30 seconds through that airlock. And you can clearly see that whilst there is a little bit of flocculation still happening in there, there's nothing like there was. The Krausen has completely gone and the sediment layer is starting now to build. So I'm going to leave this for another 3 days and then I'm going to rack it into demijohns. Catch you then. Hey from the kitchen, folks. It's brew day 6, it's racking day. Let's have a look at the cider. So, you can see that it has formed a distinct layer of cider and then a distinct layer, which is very deep, of sludge. And I need to get that out of there and into these two awaiting demijohns. Now this presents me with something of a challenge, because the first lot that comes out, fine, I'll be able to fill a demijohn, but then the rest of it is going to be kind of in that sludge, but there's loads of juice in there and flavour. Now I normally use a coffee filter which has got really micro fine mesh inside it, but if I do that it's going to take me ages, so I'm going to use the less cautious approach today and just use a standard household sieve. It is fairly fine, and I'm going to pour gently and hope that not too much of the trub goes through. And if it does, then I'll have to refilter, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. So I'm literally going to lift and then just have probably a fairly cumbersome and difficult pour, but see how I get on. Right, take this apart. Smells very cidery, a bit yeasty as well. It's definitely got plenty of CO2 in it. Oh God, is this going to work? I tell you what, I've got a bad feeling about this. We'll use a jug. I can't use the tap on the Muntons wine fermenter because it'll just get clogged with sediment immediately. So there's no point in even trying that. So I'm just giving my jug a rinse. Still going to be a messy thing, I think, but let's see what happens. Right, into the jug. Yeah, messy. Okay, so every new surface that this touches introduces the possibility of contamination. So the jug is just an extra dimension. Could do without it really, but it's just going to make my life easier. Yeah, there's tons of CO2 in this. Right, first demijohn is full. Right, I'm just going to get them out for a sec. Airlock in, pushed into place. Demijohn rinsed. Lovely jubbly. One done. One to go. Now if this one does end up literally that deep in sediment, then the racking is pointless with the second demijohn. So if that does happen, I will re-rack it with a proper filter. But I'm going to see how it goes first. Okay, I'll try and get a bit more in. I'm probably going to have to empty the sieve quite shortly. Alright, I'll come back to you in a few seconds or in a minute or so, however long it takes, and I'll show you what I've got. And then airlock in just like with the first one. So I've got a lot of cleaning up to do in the kitchen now. I want to put these somewhere cool and dark, out of the way. I'll come back to you with an update, let's say in a week's time. We'll have a look at them then. Okay, catch you then. But this is brew day 13, and you can clearly see that demijohn number 1 is the one on the right hand side, which is darker, and demijohn number 2 is the one on the left, which has got that milkiness to it. But they are beginning to clear, so I'm just going to leave them. They're in my office. It's a cool room, although it is summer, but it is the coolest room in the house. I'll come back to you when there's something worth reporting on. Morning folks, it's brew day 59 for my rhubarb and hops cider, and today it's bottling day. It's not all good news though, let's have a look. So here they are. So this is obviously the one that came out of the Muntons wine fermenter first, and that is nice and clear, you can see through it. There we go, that is good enough for me. There is a slight haze, but it will look absolutely fine in the glass. a minimal amount of sediment in the bottom. Demijohn number 2, however, isn't looking so healthy. In fact, it's looking very unhealthy. There's stuff around the side of the neck and there's stuff floating on top. I've never seen that before on any of my brews at this stage. Whether it's got infected or whether it's a result of sitting on the lees, I don't know. But I'm going to open it up and have a sniff. And yeah, I'll decide from there. So I'm just going to get the bung out. I'm a bit reticent to do this. I'm definitely not tasting it. It smells like... It smells like mould on cider. It's not horrific, but it's not drinkable, put it that way. I'll show you. So I think this is probably down to me, you know, getting all the bits out the bottom, and there's been some things in there which just weren't that good. I mean, if you remember how I did it, I think to shake it through the mesh. So I could tip this down the sink, but that would be a waste of alcohol. So that's going to go back in. This is going to go away until autumn, winter, when I'm bored, when I've got nothing to do, and then I'm going to run it through my air still and try and make a bottle of gin out of it. Why not? Okay, what's the point in throwing alcohol away? So this one isn't getting bottled today. This one is going into storage. This one, however, is getting bottled today, and here are my bottles, nicely sanitised. So I'm hoping that from this demijohn I'll fill 6 bottles. I've got 6 700ml bottles in the sink, but in case I don't, I've also got a half size 330 or whatever it is, 375 just there, as well as the hydrometer tube. Now before I can begin, I need to put some sugar in each bottle because I want this to have a sparkle. So this is what I'm calling priming sugar, standard household sugar, and I'm just going to put the equivalent of a teaspoon in each of these bottles. So when the yeast finds this sugar, it will break it apart. And breaking it apart releases CO2. Pressure from that CO2 will build up in each bottle. And that is what will give it a sparkle. That's the plan anyway. Fingers crossed it happens. So I'm going to get the bung out of my demijohn. I'm going to put this siphoning tube in. Note the black clip at the top, which holds it in place. And I'm just going to push this down so the bottom of the tube is slightly above the sediment line, but not quite in it. Oh, I'm a little bit in it, but never mind, because the first bit that comes out is going into the hydrometer tube. I might end up with a slightly sedimenty bottle, but most of them should be fine. Right, let's crack on. And it's coming out a little bit cloudy. It's cleared up already, that's lovely. And into my first bottle. So I'm just going to put that to one side, actually, quick sniff. Just smells like cider, so that's good. And I'm not really picking up much sediment, a little bit, but not enough to worry about. So I think this one will be the one bottle that gets a little bit sedimenty. And out of that one, and into the next one. So you can see it has cleared a little bit of sediment from the bottom there, but overall that is looking pretty swish. You can also see reaction to the sugar. That's a good sign. Into bottle number 3. I've got a good feeling about this. I think I will manage to get 6 bottles. So I don't think I'm going to need this one, hopefully. So I'm on the last bottle. Will it or won't it? It is literally going to be down to the wire. I guess if it doesn't quite do it, I can use this to top up bottle number 6. Where's it going to fall? We've got bubbles in the siphoning tube, and I'm pulling that up, and that is all going to go into the bottle. I'm virtually there. One or two of these bottles are slightly over full. I can basically just tip a little bit out of maybe that one into that one, and we'll be good. So I've achieved 6 bottles, and I'm really happy about that. Right, so it's now time to bung those bottles, and I've had my bungs softening in very hot water, and that makes them malleable so they push in just that bit easier. So bung into bottle and pushed in, and that's that. Yep, and then on top of the bung goes a cage. So I pull the cage down and twist it and twist it and twist it until I'm satisfied that it's locked in place, and that keeps the bung secure. Okay, so when the yeast finds that sugar in there, when it smashes it apart, when it puts CO2 into this, that pressure builds up. Without that cage, that bung goes poof. Okay, this keeps it secure, and these are tolerant of pressure bottles. Each one of these bottles weighs more than 700 grams. I only use the heavyweight ones, I don't use lightweight ones. Okay, I did have one bottle bomb once, I don't want another. So I've got 1 bottle done, I've got 5 more to do. I'll come back to you shortly. Right, that's all 6 bottles done. Let's see what the alcohol by volume is by taking the final gravity. So it was a very low starter at 1.030. I don't usually go anywhere near that low. See what it's ended up at. Well, it sank nicely, so that is a positive at least. Oh, it's not as low as I wanted it to be though. This is going to be one of them ciders that's just going to be a bit middle of the road in terms of ABV. I don't usually make them like this, as my regular viewers will be able to testify. I'm just trying to get my hydrometer not to settle with its back to me, but unfortunately the nature of hydrometers is that's what they do. Right, shut up Stuart, what is the final gravity of this brew? And the final gravity of this brew is 0.998. Let's work out the alcohol by volume. So 1.030 minus 0.998 equals 0.032 multiplied by 131.25 equals, drumroll please, 4.2%. A bit pants, but never mind. I was brought up to believe that if it's less than 5%, it's not worth drinking. Only time will tell whether this is. Right, I better get some labels made. Okay, I've made these labels on my phone using an app called Printmaster, and I'm going to send them via Bluetooth to this Fomamo Bluetooth printer, just like magic. It's right fancy. And now it's simply a case of getting the labels on my bottles. Straight. 1 down, 5 to go. And there they are, like 6 green bottles standing on a table, 'cause I don't have a wall. I never said I could sing. So here they are on top of my drinks cabinet, where it's currently 23.9 degrees Celsius, so perfect for them to condition next to something that's been there for quite a bit while longer. The conditioning process is straightforward. It's simply a case of leave it, be patient, and then come and open it and try it and see how the flavour has developed and see if it's carbonated. So that's what happens during conditioning. The CO2 will build up inside the bottles, which should give it a sparkle, and the flavours should develop. Hopefully I'll be able to pick out the apple, the rhubarb and the hops. Only time will tell. So I'll be opening these in about a month, 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks time. I'll come back to you at some point later in the year. Right, catch you then. From the kitchen, folks. It's the grand opening and tasting night for my rhubarb and hops wine. Now I can't remember the brew day, but this was bottled on the 3rd of September and it's now the 19th of October, so we'll work it out and I'll shove it in the bottom corner of the film. But I'm going to open this today and I'm hoping that I'm going to have something that tastes nice, looks good in the glass, smells nice, all that jazz, the usual. Shut up, Stuart, get on with it. I've got my little fork out because the cage has gone sharp and I've got delicate fingers. So I'm just going to get this opened up. Yeah, this is definitely probably got one usage left in it, if that. Might not even make it that far. Right, has it carved? Am I going to get a pop? Yes! I've got a pop, I've got vapour, I've got a rush of bubbles to the neck of the bottle. I'm a happy chappy, yes. Right, I've got my Sydney Rabbitohs glass. Oh, Rabbitohs. Oh, that looks good, doesn't it? That looks really nice. I'm happy with that. Yeah, the sporting combination today is Dresden Football Club and Sydney Rabbitohs Rugby League Club. Truly international. Right. It smells like cider. I think the hops are coming through. I'm not particularly smelling the rhubarb. Let's give it a taste. Yeah, I'm getting the zesty, almost lemony quality of the rhubarb in that flavour, and then the hops comes through as a floral afterwards. So the floralness of the hops is coming in second place, the zestiness of the rhubarb is coming in first place. The apples are somewhere buried in between. It's a nice cider. It's got a good flavour, good level of gassiness. It's somewhere around about the dry to medium dry scale. It's in between medium dry and dry. Sorry, my dishwasher always does this when I'm talking. Stop it. Right, I've turned it off. Stop it. Okay, because I don't want you thinking it's my stomach, which it could be, but it isn't. Right, so this is genuinely a decent cider. It's not that strong, I don't think. It's only 4.2%. It's kiddies cider. It's what we give the nippers before they go to bed. But yeah, I don't usually make them this week. I can't remember why that happened, but it was ages ago. I'm still going to enjoy the taste tonight. So I hope you've enjoyed the film, folks. I will enjoy this cider, and I'm going to catch you on the next film, whatever that may be. Probably a cooking film, but who knows? It could be an unboxing, could be another brew film. Thanks for your support, thanks for subscribing, thanks for commenting, all that sort of stuff. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you haven't commented, then say hello, tell me where you're from. Right, been a pleasure, folks. I'll catch you on the next film.